Hey, hi, hello. How are you doing? It's me, Levin, and welcome to my channel where I do whatever I want. And we all know Five Nights at Freddy's, right? I'm going to assume you said yes because you clicked on this video. If you clicked on this by accident, then let me explain this godforsaken franchise. So basically, these two guys create a children's pizza place. One of them decides to go get rid of some children, and said children haunt some animatronics. That's the gist of it. You still don't understand? Good, you're in the right mindset. This franchise has been running off the same premise for years, since, God, 2014? Am I that old already? Whatever. The games are basically the same thing. You sit there and you try to survive 5 nights, or 7 nights including bonus modes and such. And to top this all off, all these games were published by an indie developer, Scott Cawthon, which is kind of insane that it stayed indie for as long as it did. It stayed independent for nearly a decade. But of course, all that changed. On December 16th, 2021, the subject of this video was published. It was the newest mainline installment of the game franchise, and it was also the first one not published independently. And I'm not going to say it shows, but it shows. Security Breach was marked by many as a change in the series. Security Breach, which I wish had a shorter shorthand, was a relatively open world game and had a storyline that wasn't hidden under 6 layers of lore and bricks on the wall shaped like a dial pad. We'll never let Scott live that one down. And you know what? Us FNAF fans are easily satisfied. We were honestly hyped for this game, at least I was, and I was excited to see where it went. On top of this, the initial marketing implied that we would finally have a new villain, and that just got us even more excited. The previous antagonist we had, William Afton, was interesting, don't get me wrong, but he had a send-off and a fate that seemed fitting for the character. And while this new villain was indeed new, it was still seemed to be connected to William Afton, which helped the suspension of disbelief that there would be 2 child exterminators that were fond of bunny suits at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And when those first few trailers dropped and we saw Vanny skipping across the hall towards the camera, it was honestly super cool. Like, who wouldn't be terrified or intrigued, depending on how much you like horror, seeing this? Like, come on. But then the second trailer dropped, and god damn it, he really doesn't lie when he says he always comes back. I, for one, was disappointed, as I know a fair amount of fans were, because the second we saw that purple glow and that hand ripped the doorway, we knew that we weren't going to get a new antagonist. Instead, we were just getting a plot device to get our old antagonists back. And that's why, in my humble opinion, Vanny is the villain with the most wasted potential in this franchise. Let me explain. Now, I feel it's only right that before we talk about why the new was so promising and why we wanted change, that we need to talk about the old antagonist. And so let me recount the tale of William Afton in Five Nights at Freddy's. William Afton, or as you may know him, Purple Guy, Spring Trap, Glitch Trap, Scratch Trap, and most recently Burns Trap, which, like, I'm sorry, but Burn Trap doesn't even sound good. Whatever. He was the main antagonist since the second game where he made his first appearance, and he's been the antagonist for, what, 3 separate endings? He's been burned alive at least 3 times, and he's become a joke of a character. And let me get into that. In his first few appearances, he was really menacing and a great villain. I don't think I can say any of us played FNAF 2 without getting freaked out the first time we saw him. I mean, just look at Markiplier's reaction. Seriously. That was all of us.
Can't go that way for some reason. What the hell? Purple guy!
That was all of us. And if I'm allowed to tangent as well, his design was helping him be unsettling. I mean, just look at this sprite's eyes. And genuinely look at it. They managed to be soulless and alive at the same time. Also, that smile. That's a no thank you from me. William Afton is a killer, and out of this story, he's one of the few characters that actually has, you know, a character. He's a businessman, he's smart, he's a killer, and he's programmed almost. He's such a mad scientist that he gets trapped into this big giant bunny suit of his own creation. And on top of this, to top this all off, he comes back for you. This is all reflected extremely well in the gameplay of going against William Afton. In his first appearance as the purple guy in these mini games, he will corner you and he will chase your sprites in order to give you that game over. In FNAF 3, he knows where the cameras are and he stares unsettling into them. And sometimes he even knows how to hide from them. In his other two installments, he's not as well portrayed, in my opinion. I don't think that Burn Trap's boss fight makes much sense for William Afton, but that's not what this video is about. William Afton was a great antagonist because he could be unsettling. He didn't need any atmosphere to make him unsettling. Now don't get me wrong, that helped, but just his designs, not you, Scraptrap, made him unsettling, and knowing the story made him unsettling. If he's so great, why did we want a new villain? I hear some of you asking. Well, it boils down to the fact that sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. Now, William Afton, good old Willie A, is a great villain, don't get me wrong. But you can only take so much of a villain back to back to back. And I think the fatigue just got to fans. I mean, how many times is this man going to get burned alive and come back out of sheer goddamn willpower? William Afton got exhausting. And that's his downfall. And I'll be honest, I think Scott Cawthon realized this near the end of his run on the series. And that realization culminated into probably the best thing about William Afton, his defeat. At the end of Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, or FNAF 6, as some people like to call it, there's this incredible moment that I'm sure you've heard before if you've had anything to do with the series, where one of our main protagonists, Henry, gives off this speech as he's burning the place to the ground. A staple for the series. But this speech was so powerful, almost. And the fact that he calls out William Afton and we get this amazing render of him burning in the vents, it felt right. It felt like this should have been where William Afton was left. And it's that moment that made us so eager to see what comes next. We didn't want William Afton to come back, not because we didn't love him, but because at that point, it felt right for him to leave. But of course, he didn't leave. He came back, as he jokingly always does, and while it's kind of on brand for him, it felt very unnecessary for him to even be part of this game. I mean, we already had a villain, and we already had a good antagonist until this point. Now, look, I'll be honest, a lot of my problems that I have with Vanny's wasted potential is because Steel Wolf Studios decided to bring William Afton back as Burn Trap, and honestly, resulted in one of the least interesting boss fights ever. Out of the multiple endings of Security Breach, I think the Burn Trap ending, which is supposed to be the true ending, is the weakest. And look, I know some of you are already saying, well, William Afton was already coming back as Glitchtrap. But there's a difference between what they were doing with the Glitchtrap storyline and what they were doing with the Burntrap storyline. Glitchtrap was a computer entity. He wasn't an actual being, and it was heavily implied that he wasn't even part of William Afton at all. He was just this downloaded conscious, almost like the theories of Marvin from Petscop. Was he a deranged killer? Yes, but he wasn't William. He was distinctly different. And while he was William S., he wasn't the true William. The true William died. Or so we thought. The entire Burntrap arc is just unnecessary. This character's arc is done, and that's what makes it so infuriating when we saw that he was coming back in the second trailer. But it wasn't just that, of course. As I've touched on previously, William Afton lost what made him interesting as an antagonist in a video game. This character was initially loved because when you were playing against him in the games, he was so much more difficult. He knew where the cameras were, he knew about the map, he knew everything about this place. But you don't get that in Security Breach. Or at least you don't get the opportunity to see that. I know there's going to be an argument that, oh, he wasn't there for the Pizzaplex, he wasn't there for the building of it, so how would he know? But he knew about the FNAF 3 location instantly. And he also knew where the freaking vents were, which, I mean, you tell me how he learned all that within the night. Burntrap in Security Breach is just, well, put simply, he's the old man Joseph of Five Nights at Freddy's now. And I wish I was joking. And okay, we're getting a little far into the runtime here, so I guess I'll cut this segment around here. But to conclude, we were ready for another villain. Without a doubt, we were ready for another antagonist. We didn't want William Afton to come back. At least most of us didn't want him to come back. So that leads us to... And then that brings us to Vanny. Now, I think I need to preface this part by saying I don't hate Vanny as a character. In fact, I think she's quite a good character. That's the whole reason I'm calling her wasted potential. I think that the character of Vanessa, a reluctant follower of a serial killer, makes for an interesting story, and when it's done well in pop culture, like the way it's done multiple instances throughout the Scream franchise and in the TV show version of Chucky, these are the kinds of plots that I myself am drawn to, and that probably says a lot more about my mental state than I meant for it to. So with that being said, I'm actually going to change how I was going to approach this. In my original script, I kind of just went all in on the criticism on Vanny, and I actually think that it's not Vanny's fault that this potential was wasted. It's not the character's fault that this character didn't blossom into what it could have been. It's more the writer's fault and the writer's inability to let go of certain characters. That being said, I'm going to start with some things that I do think are good with Vanny. Give her a fair chance. First of those things being, Vanny's design is just awesome. It's not quite as sinister as the initial purple guy design, but it doesn't need to be, because Vanny's not supposed to be this terrifying threat. And I don't think she was ever meant to be. The way I see it, she's almost this bastardization of what a serial killer should be, and I think that's really cool. She's not a programmed killer like Springtrap, for instance. She doesn't have that. Which might be ironic because it's heavily implied that she was taken over by the Glitchtrap virus, which is a coded thing, but ignoring that, this isn't her nature. Her design definitely shows that. Especially since the previous version we saw William Afton in was Glitchtrap, and he had this hand-sewn costume, which is heavily implied to be the first suit he might have done a killing in, which is interesting. And Vanny playing into this really copycat killer as trope, her costume is very similar to that. It's stitched, not some animatronic costume. It's not spring locks, it's fabric. Another thing is, it's very clear that Vanny isn't just some psychopath who breaks. Everything in the game tells us she's brainwashed, or at the very least, not fully in mental control. And that makes it for such an interesting dynamic, especially with the series. The series kind of relies on you wanting to And since the whole haunted animatronic angle was mostly abandoned with the security breach, having something else that we wanted to save as the protagonist was definitely the right choice. But the one problem with all of this is she's never really utilized in that way. Now let me paint you two pictures. One's going to be what we actually got, and one is going to be what I think they wanted us to have, or at least what I would have expected them to give. Now tell me, would you rather have a character who appears for less than 20% of the video game they're supposed to be the main antagonist of, who comes in with this gross looking filter over the entire screen, and whose chase cycles are no harder than the regular enemy's chase cycles? Or would you have rather had this cool antagonist who could also be kind of an ally in certain senses, who alternates between helping you and trying to hunt you down, which ultimately makes the decision to set her free all the more important? Now, I don't know for sure about you, but I can guarantee a lot of you would rather have the second option. Now, I want to make it really clear, I don't hold anything against the members at Steelwool. They had a lot, and they've had to deal with major setbacks. And in fact, the whole development of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is a whole bag of worms that I really want to dig deeper into in maybe a future video. And I also don't think that the problems with Vanny's handling ruin Security Breach as a whole, mostly because Vanny's only in about 20 minutes of the 4+ hour game, but I digress. And with Ruin DLC coming out later this year, I'm really excited to see where Steelwool goes with those characters. But yeah, that brings us to the end card. Congratulations for watching the video. I'm very surprised if anyone is still watching this far in. This video turned out to be much longer than I originally anticipated, and it took forever to get it done. So yay! Good on you for watching it all. Also got lots of other videos, some music, some stream VODs, and I'd love to have you join me in this magical journey, so please do like and subscribe. It only takes a second, and I even put it at the end of the video instead of interrupting the video. Can't say I do that in my other videos though. That being said, enjoy the rest of your day, and be a good person. Out.